It's a new year, and you know what that means. It's a new season of anime, and you know what that means. This current season of anime is looking like it's going to be pretty solid. I know it's just started, but there's a couple shows that are interesting and that I want to talk about. So, Solo Leveling is pretty good. It's been the poster child of manhwa power fantasies and how they're actually not that bad. It doesn't pretend to explore anything deep, and honestly, it doesn't really need to. It's just a well-written power fantasy that's fun to read. The manhwa is also a great example of how to draw with mobile consumption in mind. You can show grand scenes in a way that traditional book formats just never will be able to do. In the end, it's a basically perfect execution on a power fantasy story. And the anime so far is looking like a textbook example of how to adapt a manhwa into an anime. There's a lot of things that you need to keep in mind when making an adaptation. But most importantly, you need to have a clear understanding of what made the source material good in the first place, and what the key ideas it's exploring really are. Even if you're not making a faithful adaptation, you still need to understand these two things, because otherwise you're going to have problems making an adaptation fans will like. Let's look at another anime adaptation to see how you do this well. My Dress Up Darling is one of my favorite manga, and I think that the anime adaptation is about as perfect as you can get. It takes the plot of the opening arcs of the manga and streamlines them into the best parts while keeping true to the ideas of the story. While the plot points of the first couple chapters are adapted fairly faithfully, some of the scenes connecting them are anime original, and as the series goes on, events that aren't as plot important are dropped in favor of focusing time on the story at hand. I love the manga, it's one of my favorites of all time, but the best way to experience the story right now, in my opinion, is the anime. Back to Solo Leveling. The team at A1 Pictures seems to have a clear understanding of what made the source material good in the first place. Like, one of the things that the manhwa is the best at is fight scenes. So, A1 Pictures started the series with a fight scene. For someone whose first introduction to the series is the show, it's giving you a taste of what makes the series great. And if you've read Solo Leveling, you're thinking, holy shit, they're showing this? It's a way of engaging the viewer regardless of how well they know the story. This should be a case study in how you start a series with this much hype. And it's an anime original scene. The manhwa and web novels start at the dungeon raid, the part after the anime's exposition dump. Exposition. The manhwa and web novels start at the dungeon raid, the part after the anime's exposition dump. Starting with the dungeon raid, the anime is fairly faithful at specifically adapting the manhwa, even recreating panels in detail, and I believe that is what they're going to adapt from in the future. There are some odd choices in the adaptation. Like, they introduce us to several characters like Chairman Go Gun-hee and Chai Hai-in in the first episode, even though they aren't really plot relevant until later in the story. Also, introducing the S-rank heroes so early honestly takes away some of the grandeur that they have. In the manhwa, we build up to the S-ranks, and by the time we finally meet them, we fully understand how powerful they really are and why they are a big deal. Introducing them so early makes it hard to fully put their power and the power of the monsters that they end up fighting into context. So Solo Leveling looks promising. If it keeps making smart choices in how it adapts the manhwa, we might be looking at one of the best power fantasies in anime, period. Metallic Rouge is a vibe, and I love it. It follows the advanced android Rouge as she hunts down other advanced androids, the Immortal Nine, for rebelling against humanity. I'm currently rewatching Carol and Tuesday for reasons. Like and subscribe, by the way. And Metallic Rouge has a very similar feel and atmosphere to it, which makes sense since director Motonobu Hori directed both. I misspoke, he co-directed Carol and Tuesday with Shinichiro Watanabe. Anyways, back to the video. It takes place on a much more dystopian Mars, where humans live alongside androids called Neons. Neons? I think it's Neons. Androids called Neons, who rely on a special juice called Nectar to keep running. Mars feels like a cyberpunk New York, a dense urban sprawl with a Central Park equivalent. While visually it doesn't really look like Carol and Tuesday, the directing, the dialogue, and the soundtrack feel really similar. And the soundtrack, ooh. There's this thing that some anime do with their soundtracks, where they don't use music that you would traditionally associate with their genres, and whatever scene the music is playing over. But they change the musical genre to create a different style or feeling. Shinichiro Watanabe's works are a great example. Each uses a different style of music to create its atmosphere. Ironically, Carol and Tuesday is the exception, since the show is about music itself. Metallic Rouge doesn't take a genre and bend it to its scenes, but it evokes film genres you normally wouldn't see through its OST. Like, there's this theme that plays throughout the first episode. As the characters are heading to the big fight at the end of the episode, the theme starts to play again, but in this context, it starts to take on a slightly different meaning. It's evoking Hollywood westerns. They are going to duel. Not at high noon, but at midnight. And when the fight starts, the music shifts to a battle hymn, and it's great. The fight also looks amazing. Studio Bones made a visual treat. What makes this show hard to recommend after just one episode is that they set up a lot of very interesting ideas that it's going to be very hard for them to fully pull off. Like the androids that Rouge is hunting, the Immortal Nine, clearly have religious imagery surrounding them. For example, they have halos when they transform into their battle gear. There are also themes of racism and exploitation. The Neons are second-class citizens that are seen as literally disposable. They have a good reason to want to rebel. Looking at the facts as they are, it's ambiguous whether Rouge really is the good guy of the series. If the show never addresses how the Immortal Nine really do have a very good reason to want to rebel, then it's going to have some very unfortunate social commentary within the show. If Metallic Rouge can pull off all the ideas that it's juggling, then it's anime of the season material. I'm admittedly skeptical that it can, but hey, it's still gonna be a fun time to watch. Also, the OP is my favorite this season. It's just not something that you normally see in this genre, and I think it's great. I felt like I should say that. The best first episode this season is Delicious in Dungeon. If people hadn't said that Frieren saved fantasy anime, which, just taking a step back, was weird, isekai is a type of fantasy anime. And there's a lot of I can't believe it's not isekai anime each season that are just fantasy anime. Fantasy anime was never in danger of dying. It was fine. I don't know why people said it needed to be saved. But if it did, and Frieren didn't exist, this would have saved it. Delicious in Dungeon is a comedic take on a fantasy setting that asks the question, but can you eat the monsters? It's both a really interesting look at what monster ecology would look like, and a pretty great comedy show. If you ever wanted an anime fantasy cooking show, you have weird, specific tastes, but hey, you got a really good show out of it, so I'm not going to judge you that hard. The painting-like style is beautiful and animates amazingly. This has to be one of Trigger's best-looking shows. But they all look amazing, so it's hard to say. It's not doing anything super deep right now, but it doesn't need to. It's just a fun time. This is the easiest show for me to recommend this season. There are definitely other shows worth watching this season. Hi, this is editing me. This was supposed to be the part of the video where I talk about, hey, I'm watching other stuff, but like, maybe I'll talk about that a different time. I'm going to be on fellow small AniTuber Neon Manda's seasonal recommendation podcast episode on... Wow, I truly worded that terribly. I'll be on the Castaway Anime Podcast's seasonal anime overview episode, and that's where you can hear all my opinions on every other show this season, because I did watch them all, for better or for worse. So, have a good one. See ya.